sweeping. Good. This is good. Its lashes with expert strokes are sweeping across the land. A great palette of light has embraced this earth. If just a little clay and water mixed in this divine bowl can yield such exquisite scents and sights and music and whirling forms, what unspeakable wonders must await with the commencement of unfolding of the infinite number of petals that are the soul. What excitement will renew your body when we all begin to see that our beloved's heart resides in everything. God has a root in each act and creature that is drawn from divinity into the mysterious life form. Yes, divine eyes are painting fields again. The beloved with gentle hands is tending, raising like a precious child, himself, herself, in you. Has anyone here ever heard the name Brian Stevenson? Brian Stevenson. He's a black civil rights lawyer that helped 140 people to get off of death row. During an interview that he had with Mel Robbins, he recounts a phone call he had with a death row client when he was informing this client that all the appeals processes had been exhausted and there was no way to avoid execution. His client was intellectually challenged and when upset had difficulty articulating, and of course he was upset upon hearing this news. The man began to sob on the other end of the phone, and while Brian quietly and sadly held the space for this man, he was reminded of a moment, a life-changing moment in his own past when someone else had trouble getting the words out. A 10-year-old Brian had been taken to church that day by his mom, and he was there with some friends, and he noticed this skinny younger kid standing off by himself to the side. So he goes up to the kid, "Hey man, what's your name?" And the younger boy stuttered when he tried to answer, at which point Brian laughs at him. Brian's mom, across the room, sees this and marches over, pulls her son aside, and after admonishing him for laughing at this child, instructs him that he is going to go back to that kid and apologize. Okay, Brian complied, started to take a step, but then Mom stops him. "Wait, get back here. After you apologize to this child, you are going to hug him." All right, Brian rolls his eyes, but before he could take a step in that direction, Mom wasn't done yet. She continues to get inspired. "After you tell this boy that you're sorry and that you're going to hug him, you're going to tell him that you love him." "Mom, I cannot tell this kid I love him." But when Mom gave him the look that he knew this is not negotiable, over he slogged. So he says to the little boy, "Look, man, I'm sorry." And then Brian describes sort of lunging at him and then giving him some little boy version of a man hug. And then, as insincerely as he could, he says, I don't know. Well, I love you." And at that, the little boy hugs Brian right back and in his ear flawlessly says, "I love you too." Brian, the attorney, was remembering all of this while he's giving space to his client who had tried to get his words out. And when this client finally did collect himself, he said, I want to say thank you to you for all that you've done. And I wanted to say to you, I love you for trying so hard to save my life. And right after that, the phone was hung up, the man was pulled away, strapped to a gurney, and his life was ended. About that experience, Brian says he came to a fundamental understanding. He had this self-realization that he doesn't do this work because of the good training that he had, or not even because of his fight for human rights, to some degree. But mostly, he is driven to do this difficult work for these flawed people because he recognizes his own brokenness. He does this work because he knows of his own flaws and because of his deep belief, because of his own personal experience of this due to his brokenness, his experience of resilience and grace and redemption and mercy. This man, about whom a film was made entitled Just Mercy, perhaps that'll be our next dinner and a movie, he makes this powerful statement that there is to each of us imperfect people so much more than the worst thing we've ever done. Recently, we've celebrated some nation-centered stuff. Memorial Day. We were just at a rally yesterday, steps from here, celebrating No Kings. Independence Day is coming up. And of course, Juneteenth is a holiday coming up this Thursday. One of, if not the worst things done in our nation's history is not only the enslavement of people, but the continuation of the mistreatment of people of African descent. Wouldn't it be great if the crux of Make America Great Again had to do with our sorrow and our reconciliation about that? What a concept. When I think of Juneteenth, I think of it as an observance as much as a celebration. An observance. It's unique, this Juneteenth thing, because there are these two sides of it. One side has to do with joy and resilience, but it's all laid against the backdrop, the dark backdrop of enslavement. We'll hear more about that in a minute, the observance part versus celebration. But I have another story to tell you that Brian tells. This time it's about the time when he was a young law student and he goes to death row for the very first time, sent there to inform a condemned man that his execution wasn't imminent. When the man was led into the visitation room by the guards, Brian vividly remembers how contained they had this man. Cuffs around his wrist, a chain around his waist, shackles against his ankles. When the guards finally leave after 10 minutes of unshackling, they learn that they shared the exact same birth date, day, month, year. So they started talking, just two people. Brian says, I forget that I'm there on a mission. It's just two people connecting. We shared our life stories. The 1 hour that was set aside for this turned into 2, and then 3. By then, the guards were angry. Without any warning, the guards burst into the room, threw this man against the wall, and very roughly reshackled him. When they were done with that, they started brusquely shoving him towards the door. And just before they got him through the door, an unforgettable thing happens. This man plants his feet so that the movement was halted momentarily. The man takes a moment to console this horrified young law student. It'll be okay, just come back and see me. And then this condemned man throws back his head and starts singing a hymn at the top of his voice. I'm pressing on the upward way, new heights I'm gaining every day, still praying as onward bound, Lord, plant my feet on higher ground. Finally, he was muscled through the door, but you could hear his voice as he continued to sing as he was pushed down that prison hallway. Lord, lift me up and let me stand by faith on Canaan's tableland, on a higher plane that I have found. Lord, plant my feet on higher ground. My friends, do we plant our feet? And if so, how? This planting of the feet can go two different ways. Either we can plant our feet in status quo, where there's no marching, there's no movement, there's no marching like Brian's mom all those years ago across that room. There's no marching and protesting at a plot of land just feet from here, as happened yesterday. If we approach Juneteenth as an observance instead of just a celebration, then what are we observing? What parts of our history do we really expose ourselves to? When I was a minister at a Unitarian church in Louisville, not so long ago, the same church that provided sanctuary to the protesters of Breonna Taylor's murder, I suggested to my congregation on more than one occasion that we consider going through a process of making a public statement of apology for our church's contributions to the marginalization of people of African descent. Now you might wonder, why would that be necessary? I mean, a bunch of Unitarians that are progressive offering safe space to protesters. Well, it wasn't always that way. In Louisville, there's a prominent family by the name of Speed. Just weeks ago, Lisa and I were there, and we went through the Speed Museum of Art, the premier museum in town. Dating back generations, this is one of the premier families in this community. Joshua Fry Speed roomed with none other than Abraham Lincoln as a young man in Springfield, Lincoln becoming a close family friend. And when he was president, he selected James Speed to be the Attorney General of the United States. These were movers and shakers. Two other details about the Speed family. They owned and benefited from the labor of enslaved people, and they were members of the First Unitarian Church of Louisville. The Speeds were generous donors to the church, and we all know that that kind of money can open doors, literally and figuratively, for churches. Needless to say, some of the wealth shared by that family to their church came from the labor of those whose freedom we celebrate on Juneteenth. The idea of a statement of apology from that congregation never got traction, not during my tenure. As we, especially as the vast, well, all of us in this particular room, I don't know about at home, As all of us here are born into white privilege, and as we approach this holiday on Thursday, and as we hopefully accept the invitation for it to be an observance and not just a holiday to celebrate, let us look at the realities of our individual and our collective histories of contribution. I'll give you a couple of examples in my own history. On how many occasions, until I got to know better, did I tell some story unnecessarily specifying the ethnicity of somebody in the story as a black person, but not specifying the white people, and therefore inadvertently othering them? How, as a middle schooler, I told the young black man dating my older sister, in an upbeat and complimentary way, how noteworthy it was that he didn't talk like most black people I knew. And some years later, how I told a black office manager at my college, in the same complimentary manner, how cool it was that she had done so well for herself to have that job. The looks on both of these people, the office manager, the young man, following my well-meaning and clueless white privileged observances, communicated 1,000 words, few of which were spoken in response by these graceful people. I'm not suggesting that we here at NCC make a statement of apology. I'm not suggesting that we center our experience of this holiday coming up this week as one of self-flagellation. But I am suggesting that in order for Juneteenth to be truly meaningful to those of us whose ancestors created the need for this holiday, for those of us whose own personal and collective histories have contributed to this, let's be real, that we look closely enough to see if and how our feet are planted. Does the planting of our feet represent a self-allowance of disengagement, especially during these times when diversity and protections against marginalized people are being stripped away daily? Or does the planting of our feet resemble the steadfast determination of the inmate that day to at least try to put a halt to the movement of the power of authority? To self-empower ourselves using our voices to sing about pressing onward the upward way by singing "We Shall Overcome" in plots of green as we did yesterday, by heeding the words of Jesus as he spoke about true power when those who were persecuting an adulterous woman, when he said, "Let you without sin cast the first stone." Jesus allowed himself to be close enough to the outcast, to the lepers, to the sinners, to behold their humanity, their inherent worth and dignity. We're going to see a film now about Brian in this interview with Mel Robbins. It's just a little clip, but it speaks of this kind of love, of the kind of love that Jesus had and that we are called to. Let's listen.
And now 40 years later, sometimes people say, well, how have you helped all these people get relief? How have you won these cases at the Supreme Court? And I know they want me to say it's because I'm hardworking, we try to be smart, we try to be tactical, and we do try to be tactical and smart and work hard. But the truth is that if I've helped anybody during my 40 years as a lawyer, it's not because I'm hardworking or smart or tactical. It's because I got close enough to a condemned man to hear his song. And I believe that there are songs still being sung in jails and prisons all across this country. I think in places where there's poverty and despair and oppression, there are songs still being sung. And when we get close enough to hear those songs, those melodies teach us something about what being human is about. They teach us something about what justice is about. And I think we should get proximate, not just to help other people. I think we should get proximate to help ourselves, because it's been the greatest gift that someone could give to me, to be in the midst of justice and condemnation, to stand next to the condemned and the hated and disfavored, and to see the power of love create something beautiful, which is what happens when we are committed to proximity, when we're committed to seeing the humanity and dignity of every human being.
After such powerful, grace-filled words, I don't know that I really have much more to say. How do you follow that? I'll conclude here to say that there is so much power and redemption and mercy in the 5 simple words: I'm sorry, I love you. As we move forward toward this day that we call Juneteenth, may those 5 words resonate in our hearts, out loud, in our actions. I look forward to hearing your sentiments about what you think of this fine man who so beautifully continues in our time what Jesus started in his. I'll hand the microphone over to Wilhelmina now.
Thank you, Lori. Any